allow me to start this by saying I'm not trying to attack anybody with this video. If you like Bumblebee, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I myself am a fan of Bumblebee. I don't like what it is now, but I'm not prejudiced against anyone, so if you like it, I'm happy for you. With that being said, I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, and not all of them are positive, so I ask that you don't take anything I say too personally, and I hope we can be friends. RWBY holds a special place in my heart despite its many, many flaws because it is the first anime, yes, I'm calling it an anime, fuck off, that I ever watched and was the catalyst that would pretty much go on to get me addicted to hentai. Despite my last video saying I'm basically losing interest in RWBY, I do always catch myself thinking about it. More specifically, I'm just coming up with AUs in my head and calling myself a genius, not too dissimilar to what Miles and Carrie are doing in the writer's room. One of the things I tend to think about a lot is Monochrome and by extension Adam Taurus as well. I often think about how the events of RWBY would play out if it was Monochrome instead of Bumblebee. Bumblebee, I thought, had a very strong start in Volume 2 with the scene where Yang talks to Blake about Summer and Raven and helps Blake slow down so as not to tire herself out. This can obviously just be seen as friends giving a helping hand, but in the shipping world, any kind of positive interaction between two characters pretty much means they're madly in love. Sorry, I don't make the rules. Things got even better, for me at least, in Volume 3 when Yang loses her arm protecting Blake from Adam. It really made me go, there might actually be something here that is just more than fan service. Unfortunately, Bumblebee never hit that same high it did in Volume 3, in my opinion. While I am okay with Bumblebee being canon in RWBY, the events that led up to it make it feel kind of undeserved. Yang's PTSD felt like it had little to no impact. Blake's relationship with Sun was, in my opinion, really well developed in Volumes 4 and 5, which started to make the possibility of Bumblebee start to feel out of place. And lastly, I think the two killing Adam at the end of Volume 6 was stupid and out of character, and it made me start to kind of resent Bumblebee. It felt like as time went on, Bumblebee went from what felt like a natural progression of the two's relationship to plain and simple pandering to the audience. Since more and more people were dropping the show due to its less than stellar writing, the shippers were pretty much the only people left, so might as well give them what they want, I guess. As I stated earlier, Monochrome is probably at this point my favorite ship in RWBY, and as time has gone on, I began to plan in my head how different RWBY would be if it was Weiss and Blake, with mostly the same story events playing out, since I'm not going to do an entire rewrite of the show just yet. This is more or less just plain and simple fanfiction of what is, in my opinion, a better version of RWBY. First off, let's start with Adam, since his role is just as important to this as Weiss and Blake. Adam is Blake's mentor, nothing more. There are no romantic feelings between them, they just have a tight student-mentor bond. And over time, Blake would grow more distant to him as he became more radical in his belief. Adam still cares for Blake, but their opposing ideologies means that they will have to confront each other at some point, and neither are looking forward to this. This is pretty much their relationship in Volume 2 from what Blake described. I'm just making sure it stays this way. Let's go to Weiss. She's pretty much going to be the main focal point of this video. So in Volume 1, Weiss is, well, let's just call her what she is, a racist. Now, I see the issue with making one of the main characters a racist, and so did the writers of the show, which resulted in them trying to move away from this just slowly enough to where it could be called character development. Instead, I'm going to double down on this. Obviously, she isn't going to stay this way. That's the point of a character arc. But I think if you really want to hammer home the contrast of sheltered princess who doesn't understand how the world works and revolutionary fighting against said princess, you kind of need to emphasize these things a little bit. There's this light novel series I've been reading recently called I'm in Love with the Villainess, and God damn it, if Spy Family didn't already make me sad because I don't have a daughter, this gave me turbo depression over the fact that I don't have twin daughters. Life is unfair, damn it. It should have been. Besides the fact that this is pretty much just peak literature, there are a few things I think Weiss's character could take a few pages from. In the light novel, said villainess, Claire Francois, is a hoity-toity aristocrat who thinks commoners are lesser people who deserve nothing. This is primarily shown when main character Ray Taylor shows up and is harassed by Claire for being a commoner, not even doing so much as calling her by her name. It's just unfortunate Ray loves it when she bullies her. Things continue like this till the second book, which is past the anime, so spoilers, where after some time, Claire softens up to Ray, even calling her by her name, and later the two go home to Ray's family town, where Claire for the first time has to live like a peasant, and it's through these things that things are finally put into perspective for Claire. Wondering how anyone can live like this, she starts to take a second look at how at all things and begins actually trying to help the common folk instead of waving them away. Now, is this the most brilliant story ever told? No. But I think it is a potentially interesting one, and the kind of story that I think could be applied to Weiss, only instead of hating poor people, she hates people who don't look like her. In this version of events, Weiss is a turbo-racist. She hates Faunus with a burning passion. Maybe not to the point of enslaving them like the SDC has been doing, but she really doesn't like them. Now, let's go back to the end of Volume 1. In it, Weiss basically says she doesn't care anymore that Blake is a Faunus. She just kind of got over it off screen. This time, things are going to be a bit different. Instead, Weiss still doesn't like Blake because she's both a Faunus and an ex-member of the White Fang. She'll still work with her because she needs to for school, but outside of team exercises, Weiss won't interact with her in any capacity. Over time, of course, the distance between them will gradually close, and I think the point that would cause Weiss to re-examine the way she treats both Blake and Faunus in general is if she sees something similar to what I talked about in I'm in Love with the Villainess. Perhaps she sees something like an SDC dust mine and notices how the Faunus are basically being treated like slaves, getting worked to death, and being denied basic human rights. This could result in Weiss profusely apologizing to Blake about the way she has acted over the course of the last 2 volumes, and maybe we could have something like Blake doesn't accept it at first, but comes around once she sees that Weiss is genuine about being apologetic. Now let's say at this point we're about 3/4 of the way through Volume 2, because there also needs to be time for the two to start developing actual feelings for one another. Primarily, I want Weiss to start seeing Blake differently after she has her change of heart, and be the one to start taking the first steps, but since Weiss is Weiss, she's all flat in and starts acting all soon because she definitely gives off those vibes. By the end of Volume 2, I would have Weiss ask Blake out, and Volume 3 would start with them already together. This can be first shown perhaps after their first fight in the Vital tournament, where Weiss and Blake sneak off somewhere to be alone, and that's where we get the confirmation that they're finally an item. No grandiose, stupid-ass bridge moments, they're simply dating, and that's it. I should bring this up just because it is monochrome. I don't have any plans to include any sort of homophobia plot in this version, since I don't think I would know how to even write one. After all, I am a straight man, straight as an ironing board. The only men I would have sex with are Adam Taurus and this photoshopped image of Donald Trump. So for simpleton's sakes, I'm just going to say homosexuals are completely normalized and everyone is fine with it. Now, after all this, you're probably wondering how Adam fits into all of this. As stated previously, though, Blake ran away from the White Fang. Adam still cares about her and, if possible, doesn't want to fight her. We could have a scene early in this version of Volume 3 where Adam approaches Blake under the cover of night and warns her of the attack on Beacon, as well as giving her a way out of Vale before the attack so that she can get to safety. Blake would obviously decline, with the two acknowledging they will still have to clash. Technically, the two could just try to avoid each other during it, so my justification for them fighting would be that since Blake was so close to Adam during her time in the White Fang, she could also be close to Sienna Khan as well, meaning that she would have inside knowledge that could hurt the White Fang. So Sienna ordered her death, and Adam, being loyal to Sienna in this version, will follow her orders despite his own feelings, which is how we get our Volume 3 confrontation. And of course, instead of Yang confronting Blake, it would be Weiss this time, but with a few changes. Firstly, instead of crippling Weiss physically like he did with Ying and RWBY proper, I think a more emotional damage route would be more fitting. I, and a lot of other people, I'm sure, had this idea when Adam's face was first revealed, but what if Adam was secretly a bastard child of the Shnees? My backstory for Adam in this is that Willow had an affair with a Faunus servant who could be Adam's father. Perhaps the two would stay at Schnee Manor for a time as servants, but eventually, in an attempt to cover up her affair, she has Adam and his father sent to the mines. The reason I want it to be Willow and not Jacques is because I think Adam having the Schnee semblance would be interesting for his character, having the sort of power that serves as a constant reminder of the family that threw him away. Moonslice is the same as it is in RWBY canon. It's tied to the sword since Adam clearly can't use it without the sword, as shown by Miles and Carey, so having the Schnee glyphs work out just fine. In this version, Adam's motivation isn't the liberation of Faunus. It's merely a byproduct of his true goal. His intention is the death of the Schnee family. He sees them as everything wrong with humanity, and the world can't begin to heal unless everyone in that family is dead. No exceptions. I really liked in Volume 3 how Adam just kinda one-shots Yang. It shows the power difference between the two and how this is not an enemy we are ready to fight. This meant jack shit since Dumb and Dumber don't understand power scaling, but anyway, I want to keep this, but instead of Adam just one-tapping Weiss, he opts to literally beat her physically and emotionally as well. I think it would also be pretty cool if this is where Weiss got her eye scar, serving as a reminder of her failure. At least that's how she sees it. Adam during this point is indifferent. He doesn't want to hurt Blake, but orders are orders. Once Weiss shows up though, he completely flies off the cuff, seeing this as the beginning of his vengeance. Weiss, completely powerless against Adam, who is venting years of hatred on her, begins to just give up and let herself be killed by him. Of course, at this point, Blake would step in and save her, but then proceed to run away because Adam is unbeatable at this point. Adam doesn't see himself as a hero. He thinks he is just as bad as the Shnees. After all, he is one. The only difference is he sees himself as a necessary evil, one that will rid the world of its greatest evil, then after enacting his revenge, take his own life to join them in hell, because there is no such thing as a good Shnee. Now, the rest of Volume 3 would play out the same. Cinder, Pyrrha, all that jazz. Weiss is escorted back to Atlas, and in my series of events, I would have Blake chase after her since she feels responsible for everything that happened, and Adam's end goal is the death of the Shnee family, meaning Weiss as well. Blake would want to always be by her side to protect her. Volume 4, instead of being in Menagerie, Blake is instead in Mantle trying to find a way into Atlas, since the kingdom is in complete lockdown after the fall of Beacon. Weiss would of course be back at the Shnee Manor, completely broken and traumatized by Adam. I know I'm basically giving her Yang's character arc, but it's not like she was doing anything with it, so I might as well give it to someone who can make use of it. Winter could possibly return home to see Weiss and help her get her back into fighting spirit by sparring with her, but Weiss just can't bring herself to fight anymore. In my timeline, I would exclude Weiss from any fights in both volumes 4 and 5, since she needs the time to truly tackle her internal struggles before she even thinks of picking up her sword again. We ain't doing any of that cringe-ass Yang shit where her hand shakes and she beats up an entire gang without breaking a sweat. Now, at some point, I would have Blake and Weiss reunite, perhaps after a White Fang attack on the Shnees, where then Blake decides to get Weiss as far away as possible. Their first thought would of course be RWBY and Yang, who are at this point on their way to Mistral. Yang would of course be accompanying Ranger, since she isn't a cripple, and what is essentially my King James version of events of RWBY. Now, from this point on, I don't really know what I would do. Blake would probably try to apologize to Weiss, but she doesn't blame Blake for anything that happened. They obviously still like each other, and Weiss doesn't hold any resentment like Yang did, since Blake came after her in Volume 3 this time. Trying to fix Volume 5 onward is a task too great for even me to handle, so I think this is an appropriate stopping point. Were I to go any further, it would probably be a completely different show, since Bumblebee is so front and center from Volume 6 onward. This video was more just an attempt to change the story just barely enough to fit Monochrome without making a complete reboot of RWBY. Is this peak fiction? No. Is this absolute cinema? Not really. Is this better than anything Miles and Carrie have written and could ever hope to write? I certainly fucking think so. Oh, at this point, I could probably write a RWBY Yang incest plotline, and I think it would be better than anything they've made. Of course, though, all art is subjective, and you might not like this. Once again, this isn't a Bumblebee hate video. I do like Bumblebee, but I don't like the version we got, and it's made me try to look at this show from different angles to see what could have been done differently. This is all just fun and games at the end of the day, and if you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to judge someone's character based solely off of their favorite RWBY ship. I'm not sure how to end these videos. People usually say to like and subscribe, so do that, I guess. If enough of you do, I'll do another rewrite like this, but with RWBY and Yang. I'm just crazy enough to do it. Alright, bye-bye now.